What would you do if your billionaire husband abandoned you while 8 months pregnant? Convinced you were helpless, Marcus Mitchell thought he could walk away with $18 million and a new life with an influencer. But what he didn't know is that his powerless wife, Sarah, is the daughter of one of America's most ruthless private equity executives. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about how hidden strength and family power turned the tables. If you believe justice should always be served, hit like, drop a comment with what you would have done, and share this story so more people can see that vulnerability can be the greatest weapon. Now, let's begin. Sarah Mitchell stared at her phone screen in disbelief, her 8-month pregnant belly pressing against the marble kitchen counter of their Manhattan penthouse. The Instagram live stream played on, showing her husband's supposed business dinner transforming into something else entirely. "Girls' night out at Meridian Club," Jade Cooper announced to her 50,000 followers, her platinum blonde hair catching the restaurant's ambient lighting. But there, clearly visible in the mirror behind her, sat Marcus Sterling in an intimate corner booth. Sarah's billionaire husband was supposed to be in California, closing a tech acquisition deal. The phone trembled in Sarah's hands as she watched Jade lean across the table, her manicured fingers intertwining with Marcus's. 3 years of marriage, 2 years of trying to conceive, and 8 months of carrying his child suddenly felt like a cruel joke played on national television. Sarah had built her own successful fitness app company before meeting Marcus, selling it for $12 million to focus on their family as he had insisted. She trusted him with managing their investments, believing his expertise in tech mergers would grow their wealth together. Now, watching him kiss another woman's forehead while her daughter kicked restlessly inside her, Sarah realized how naive she had been. The live stream continued as Jade giggled about her mysterious dinner companion. "Some secrets are worth keeping," she told her audience with a wink. "But let's just say tonight might change everything." Sarah's hands shook as she screenshot the evidence. The billionaire divorces and betrayal she had read about in tabloids suddenly felt personal and immediate. Her own story was unfolding in real time across social media platforms. The penthouse felt enormous and empty around her. Marcus had decorated it in cold minimalist style, all sharp angles and expensive art that felt more like a museum than a home. Sarah had wanted something warmer for their daughter, but Marcus insisted their image required sophistication that matched his billionaire status. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "California deal running late. Won't be home until tomorrow night. Love you." The lie felt like a physical slap. Sarah sank onto their pristine white sofa, her mind racing through every conversation, every business trip, every late night at the office. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she believed another notification popped up on her screen? Jade had posted a photo of expensive jewelry, tagging the location as Tiffany & Company. "Someone special thinks I deserve beautiful things," the caption read, followed by heart emojis. Sarah recognized the store. She and Marcus had registered there for their wedding. She remembered selecting china patterns and crystal stemware, planning their future together while he checked emails on his phone. Even then, his attention had been divided. The baby kicked harder, as if sensing her mother's distress. Sarah placed both hands on her belly, whispering reassurances she did not feel. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. Mommy will figure this out." But deep down, Sarah suspected their carefully constructed life was about to collapse. The billionaire divorces she had witnessed from afar always seemed so dramatic and distant. Now she understood the gut-wrenching betrayal that preceded the headlines. Marcus returned the next evening with an expensive bouquet and his usual confident smile, as if his double life existed only in Sarah's imagination. She watched him hang his designer coat in their foyer, noting the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. "How was California?" Sarah asked from the living room, her phone displaying screenshots of Jade's social media posts. "Productive," Marcus replied, loosening his tie. "The acquisition should close next month. Sorry I couldn't call more often. Back-to-back meetings. You know how it is." Sarah stood slowly, her pregnancy making quick movements difficult. At 32, she had built and sold a successful company before meeting Marcus. She understood business demands, but she also recognized deception when she saw it. "Funny thing," Sarah said, holding up her phone. "I was watching Instagram Live last night. Jade Cooper was broadcasting from Meridian Club. Remember Jade the bartender from your networking events?" Marcus's expression shifted subtly, his practiced charm faltering for just a moment. "I don't really follow social media influencers. Sarah, you know that. She seemed to know you quite well." Sarah swiped to the next screenshot. "Well enough to let you buy her jewelry from Tiffany." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Marcus ran his hand through his dark hair, a nervous habit Sarah had once found endearing. Now it simply confirmed her suspicions. "Sarah, I can explain." "Please do." She settled back onto the sofa, her hands protectively cradling her belly. "Explain how you were in California while simultaneously having dinner with your girlfriend in Manhattan." Marcus moved to the window, staring out at the city skyline as if searching for the right words. When he turned back, his expression had transformed from guilty husband to calculating businessman. "You're right," he said simply. "I wasn't in California. I was with Jade." The admission hit Sarah like a physical blow, even though she had prepared for it. Hearing the truth spoken aloud made everything real in a way that screenshots and social media posts could not. "How long?" she whispered. 6 months. 6 months. Sarah had been 4 months pregnant when it started, glowing with excitement about their growing family while her husband began building a life with someone else. "I never meant for this to happen," Marcus continued, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used in boardrooms. "But Sarah, we both know our marriage hasn't been working for a while. We've grown apart. You've become so focused on the pregnancy, on domestic things. You're not the ambitious woman I married." "I'm carrying your child," Sarah said, her voice rising. "I sold my company because you said you wanted a wife who could focus on our family. And I appreciate the sacrifice, but Jade makes me feel alive again. She understands my world, my ambitions. She's building her own brand, her own following. We're partners in a way that you and I never were." Sarah stared at this man she had shared a bed with for 3 years, wondering when he had become such a stranger. The Marcus she fell in love with had praised her business acumen, had claimed to want a true partnership. This version spoke about her pregnancy like an inconvenience and her former ambitions like ancient history. "So what are you saying, Marcus?" He straightened his shoulders, assuming the posture he used when delivering difficult news to employees or investors. "I want a divorce, Sarah. I've already spoken with my attorneys about terms. You'll be financially comfortable, of course, the penthouse, child support, enough to live well." "How generous," Sarah said bitterly. "You're giving me enough money to disappear quietly while you start over with your Instagram girlfriend. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. We can handle this like adults, like business partners dissolving a venture that isn't working anymore." Sarah felt tears threatening, but refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "And what about your daughter? Is she just another failed business venture?" For the first time, Marcus looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I'll be a good father. Sarah, visitation, birthday parties, college tuition. But let's be realistic about what's best for everyone. You'll have more support from your family, more flexibility as a single mother. My family? Sarah laughed harshly. You mean my estranged mother who I haven't spoken to in 5 years? That support system? Marcus shrugged. People change, Sarah. Maybe this will bring you back together. As Sarah watched her husband of 3 years calmly discuss dismantling their life together, she realized that all those billionaire divorces she had read about started exactly like this, with a successful man deciding his wife had expired like a business contract. 2 days after Marcus moved out to his downtown hotel suite, Sarah sat across from Catherine Walsh, the family attorney Marcus had recommended. The irony was not lost on her that she was seeking legal advice from someone on her husband's payroll. I have to be honest with you, Sarah, Catherine said, sliding documents across her mahogany desk. Marcus has been very thorough in protecting his assets. The prenuptial agreement you signed is quite comprehensive. Sarah stared at the papers, remembering how Marcus had presented the prenup as a mere formality. Standard business practice, he had assured her. Just paperwork to satisfy the lawyers and investors. What does this mean exactly? Sarah asked, though she suspected the answer would be devastating. Your settlement will be limited to $5 million plus child support. The penthouse, his company shares, investment portfolios, those remain his property. $5 million sounded enormous to most people, but Sarah knew it would disappear quickly in Manhattan, especially with a newborn. Marcus spent more than that on his art collection alone. What about my contribution to his business growth? Sarah asked. I introduced him to half his current clients through my app company network. My $12 million sale funded his first major acquisition. Catherine looked uncomfortable. The prenup specifically excludes claims based on indirect business contributions. I'm sorry, Sarah, but legally, those connections and that initial investment are considered gifts between spouses. Sarah felt her world shrinking around her. So I gave up my company, my independence, my professional network, and now I'm left with what amounts to a severance package. I wish I had better news. Marcus has been planning this very carefully. His financial advisor has been restructuring assets for months, moving money into trusts and offshore accounts that won't be subject to division. The casual cruelty of it took Sarah's breath away. While she had been picking out nursery colors and planning their daughter's future, Marcus had been systematically ensuring she would have no claim to the wealth they had supposedly built together. There is one thing, Catherine added reluctantly. Your premarital assets were significant. That $12 million from your app sale has grown considerably under Marcus's management. Even with the prenup, you should have substantial independent wealth. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. How substantial? Catherine pulled up another document on her computer. According to the investment statements I've reviewed, your portfolio should be worth approximately $18 million now. Finally, some good news. Sarah's own money had nearly doubled during their marriage. Even without Marcus's assets, $18 million would provide security for her and the baby. However, Catherine continued, and Sarah's heart sank at the word, Marcus has been managing these investments through his firm. You'll need to request a detailed accounting and potentially transfer management to an independent advisor. Why potentially? Well, some of these investments are in complex instruments that might have restrictions on withdrawal or transfer. You'll need a forensic accountant to untangle exactly what you own versus what's pledged as collateral for other ventures. Sarah's hope began to crumble. Are you saying Marcus might have used my money for his business deals? I'm saying the investment structure is more complicated than I initially realized. Your funds appear to be intermingled with his business investments in ways that might make immediate access difficult. The room seemed to spin around Sarah. Not only was Marcus divorcing her, But he had potentially trapped her own money in a web of business deals she could not understand or control. "What do I do now?" Sarah asked, feeling more lost than ever. "Get your own attorney," Catherine replied firmly. "Someone who doesn't represent Marcus's interests, and hire a forensic accountant immediately. If he's been improperly managing your assets, that changes everything." As Sarah left the law office, her phone buzzed with notifications. Jade Cooper had posted photos of herself in what looked like Sarah's own bedroom, wearing what appeared to be Sarah's jewelry. The caption read, "Living my best life in my new home. Sometimes the universe has a way of giving you exactly what you deserve." The billionaire divorces Sarah had read about always seemed to hinge on complex financial maneuvers and hidden assets. She was beginning to understand that her own story would be no different. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, Sarah woke up with blinding headaches and swollen hands that would not fit her wedding ring. At 37 weeks pregnant, she had attributed these symptoms to normal late pregnancy discomfort. But when her vision began blurring during a meeting with her new attorney, she knew something was seriously wrong. Dr. Martinez's expression was grave as she reviewed Sarah's blood pressure readings and test results. "Sarah, you're showing signs of severe preeclampsia. We need to admit you immediately for monitoring." "But I have depositions scheduled," Sarah protested weakly. "My forensic accountant is finally getting access to Marcus's investment records. Your life and your baby's life are more important than any legal proceeding." Dr. Martinez replied firmly, "Preeclampsia can progress rapidly. We're looking at potential seizures, organ failure, or placental abruption if we don't manage this carefully." As Sarah was wheeled to the high-risk pregnancy unit, she felt her carefully constructed battle plan crumbling. The stress of discovering Marcus's betrayal, combined with the shock of learning about her potentially compromised finances, was literally making her sick. Her private room overlooked Central Park, where she could see couples walking hand in hand and families playing with their children. 3 months ago, she had imagined herself in that scene with Marcus and their daughter. Now she was facing potentially life-threatening complications while completely alone. Her phone buzzed constantly with legal updates and questions she could not answer from a hospital bed. The forensic accounting had revealed disturbing patterns in her investment portfolio, but the technical details required her attention and decision-making at precisely the moment when she needed complete bed rest. Mrs. Sterling. A nurse entered with monitoring equipment. "How are you feeling?" "Like my entire life is falling apart," Sarah admitted, then caught herself. "Sorry. I know you're asking about physical symptoms." The nurse smiled sympathetically as she attached the fetal heart monitor. Physical and emotional stress often go hand in hand, especially in situations like yours. "Is there family we should call?" Sarah hesitated. Her mother Elena lived in California, and they had not spoken since Sarah's wedding. Their relationship had been strained since Sarah's father died, complicated by Elena's disapproval of Sarah's choices and her own mysterious business ventures. "No," Sarah said finally. "It's just me right now." But as the hours passed and her condition remained precarious, Sarah began to reconsider. Her daughter deserved to know her grandmother, regardless of past family tensions, and Sarah needed support from someone who understood the stakes involved. That evening, she placed the call she had been avoiding for 3 years. Elena Mitchell speaking. "Mom, it's Sarah." Her voice broke as she said the words, "I'm in the hospital, and I need help." The silence stretched across 3,000 miles before Elena spoke again. "Which hospital? I'll be on the next flight." For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Whatever had driven them apart, Elena was still her mother. Family meant something, even when everything else was falling apart. "Mount Sinai," Sarah whispered. "Mom, I'm sorry about everything. About Dad's funeral, about the things I said. Save your energy, sweetheart. We'll talk when I get there. Just focus on staying healthy for my granddaughter. As Sarah drifted off to sleep under medical supervision, her phone lit up with another social media notification. Jade had posted a photo of herself signing papers at what looked like a real estate office, with the caption, "New beginnings require bold choices. Thank you to my amazing partner for believing in our future together." Even from her hospital bed, Sarah could see her old life being systematically dismantled and redistributed. But with her mother coming to help, she felt stronger than she had in months. The billionaire divorces she had studied all seemed to involve family alliances and hidden resources. Maybe her own story was just beginning to unfold. Elena Mitchell arrived at Mount Sinai Hospital looking nothing like the grieving widow Sarah remembered from their father's funeral. At 58, Elena carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. Her tailored suit spoke of serious money, and her bearing suggested she was accustomed to getting her way. "You look terrible," Elena said without preamble, settling into the bedside chair with the efficiency of someone who had managed crisis situations before. "Nice to see you too, Mom," Sarah replied, though she was genuinely relieved to have family support. "Thank you for coming." Elena studied the medical monitors and charts with more comprehension than Sarah expected. Preeclampsia can be managed if caught early. Dr. Martinez has an excellent reputation. You're in good hands. "How do you know about Dr. Martinez?" "I make it my business to know about the best specialists in any field that might affect my family." Elena pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. "I've arranged for a private nursing staff and moved you to the VIP wing. No sense in taking chances with your health or privacy." Sarah watched her mother orchestrate these changes with the casual authority of someone accustomed to having unlimited resources. During their estrangement, Sarah had assumed Elena lived modestly on her father's life insurance and pension. This display of financial power suggested otherwise. "Mom, what do you do for work, I mean? Really do." Elena paused in her phone calls, studying Sarah with calculating eyes. "I manage investments, portfolio optimization, risk assessment, that sort of thing." "For whom?" "Private clients who value discretion over publicity." Elena's tone suggested the conversation was closed. "Now, tell me about this divorce situation. Your husband seems to have made some interesting choices." As Sarah explained the prenup, the hidden assets, and Marcus's systematic financial maneuvering, Elena's expression grew increasingly cold. By the time Sarah finished describing Jade's social media taunts and property acquisitions, her mother looked like she was planning a war. "Marcus Sterling," Elena said thoughtfully. "Sterling Tech Acquisitions. I know his business model quite well." "You do?" "He's a middleman, Sarah. He identifies promising tech companies, arranges financing for acquisitions, then flips them to larger corporations. It's profitable, but requires constant capital infusion from investors." Sarah felt confused. "But he's worth hundreds of millions. Forbes listed him among the top young entrepreneurs." Elena smiled coldly. "Forbes lists net worth, not liquid assets. Marcus's wealth exists primarily on paper, tied up in investments and leveraged positions. If his investors ever decided to call in their loans simultaneously, his empire would collapse," Sarah finished, beginning to understand. "Exactly. And right now, he's vulnerable because he's been taking increasingly risky positions to maintain his lifestyle and fund his new relationship." Sarah watched her mother with growing amazement. This was not the distant, grieving woman she remembered. This was someone who understood high-stakes finance as well as Marcus did. "Mom, who exactly are your clients?" Elena stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. People who prefer to remain behind the scenes. Sweetheart, people who understand that real power comes from controlling resources rather than taking credit for success. That doesn't really answer my question. No, it doesn't. Elena turned back to face Sarah. But what matters right now is that your husband has made a critical error in judgment. He's assumed you have no resources beyond what he's willing to provide. That assumption is about to prove very costly. Before Sarah could ask more questions, her phone erupted with notifications. Her forensic accountant had sent an urgent message Marcus had liquidated several major investments from her portfolio without authorization, using the funds for what appeared to be personal expenses and business operations. $18 million, Sarah whispered, staring at the numbers. He's stolen $18 million of my money. Elena read the message over Sarah's shoulder, her expression hardening further. Not stolen, Sarah, misappropriated, which is a federal crime when it involves investment fraud. Can we get it back? Oh, we'll get it back, Elena said with quiet certainty. And we'll get much more than that. Your husband just made the mistake of stealing from the wrong family. The way Elena said wrong family sent chills down Sarah's spine. For the first time, Sarah wondered if her estrangement from her mother had less to do with grief over her father's death, and more to do with Elena's mysterious business dealings. As if reading her thoughts, Elena smiled. There's quite a lot you don't know about me, sweetheart, but Marcus Sterling is about to get a very expensive education. 2 days after Elena's arrival, Sarah's condition had stabilized enough for serious conversations. Her mother had been taking mysterious phone calls in the hallway, speaking in the clipped tones of someone issuing orders rather than making requests. Mom, I need to know what's really going on, Sarah said as Elena returned from another lengthy call. The way you're handling this situation, the resources you seem to have access to, none of it matches what I thought I knew about your life. Elena settled into her chair with the deliberate movements of someone making a major decision. Your father and I agreed that you should have a normal childhood and young adulthood, free from the complications of our business interests. What complications? Sarah, do you remember what your father did for work? Sarah frowned. He was in import-export, something with international trade. He was, in a sense, we specialized in acquiring undervalued assets and restructuring them for maximum efficiency and profitability. That sounds like private equity. It is private equity. Sarah, we've been running one of the most successful private equity firms on the West Coast for the past 25 years. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her parents had been billionaires while she lived in a modest apartment, struggling to fund her startup with personal savings and small investor rounds. Mitchell Capital Partners, Elena continued, we focus on hostile takeovers, distressed assets, and corporate restructuring. Your father handled the public-facing operations while I managed the strategic acquisitions. Sarah stared at her mother, trying to reconcile this revelation with her memories of their middle-class lifestyle. But our house, your car, the way we lived, was carefully calculated to maintain privacy and avoid attention. Real wealth, Sarah, doesn't announce itself with mansions and yacht clubs. Real wealth operates quietly, behind shell companies and trust structures that most people never see. Elena pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a financial app displaying portfolio values that made her head spin. Mitchell Capital Partners currently manages approximately $4.7 billion in assets. $4.7 billion, Sarah repeated numbly. Your trust fund, which you've never accessed, currently contains approximately $800 million. It was established when you turned 18, but we agreed to let you build your own success before revealing its existence. Sarah felt like the hospital room was spinning around her. $800 million. I've been worried about a $5 million divorce settlement while sitting on $800 million. Your father insisted on letting you earn your own way first. He wanted you to develop character and business sense independent of family wealth. I disagreed with his approach, but respected his wishes while he was alive. And after he died, Elena's expression hardened. After he died, you accused me of caring more about money than family. You said I was cold and calculating, focused on business instead of grieving properly. So I honored your request for distance while continuing to protect your interests from behind the scenes. The memory hit Sarah like a slap. At her father's funeral, she had indeed accused Elena of being emotionally unavailable, of treating even death like a business transaction to be managed efficiently. Now she realized her mother had been managing the financial crisis caused by her father's sudden death while also trying to plan Sarah's long-term security. Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to have any idea. But circumstances have changed. Elena's voice took on the steel that Sarah was beginning to recognize as her mother's business tone. Marcus Sterling has made the mistake of targeting my daughter and granddaughter. He's about to learn what happens when you attack Mitchell family interests. What are you going to do? Elena smiled, and for the first time, Sarah saw genuine warmth mixed with predatory satisfaction. We're going to do what we do best, sweetheart. We're going to acquire his assets, restructure his business relationships, and demonstrate the difference between appearing wealthy and actually controlling wealth. Is that legal, completely legal, expensive, time-consuming, and absolutely ruthless, but entirely within the bounds of securities law and business regulations? Sarah's phone buzzed with another social media update from Jade, who had posted photos of herself in what appeared to be a private jet with Marcus. The caption read, "Off to Monaco for business meetings and pleasure, living the billionaire lifestyle with my amazing partner." Elena glanced at the screen and laughed coldly. Monaco? How predictable. Marcus is probably meeting with European investors trying to secure funding for his next acquisition. What he doesn't realize is that most of those investors are actually subsidiaries of companies we control. You're saying you already have leverage over his business. Sarah, we've been quietly acquiring positions in his investor network for the past 18 months, not because we were targeting him specifically, but because his business model creates exactly the kind of opportunities we specialize in exploiting. The pieces began falling into place for Sarah. The forensic accounting, the frozen assets, his increasingly desperate attempts to secure new funding. All symptoms of a highly leveraged businessman who's taken on more risk than he can manage. Marcus built his empire on other people's money, which means other people can take it away. Elena stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city where Marcus was probably celebrating his apparent victory over Sarah. Your husband thinks he's won because he manipulated a prenup and stole your investment funds. What he doesn't understand is that he just declared war on a family that's been winning financial battles since before he was born. Sarah felt a mixture of amazement and intimidation as she watched her mother transform from caring parent to calculating strategist. What happens next? Next, we give Marcus exactly what he thinks he wants, and then we show him what power really looks like. 1 week later, Sarah was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions for bed rest and regular monitoring. Elena had arranged for a private apartment near the hospital, complete with medical equipment and nursing staff. As Sarah recovered, she watched her mother orchestrate Marcus's destruction with the precision of a master chess player. The first phase is complete, Elena announced, reviewing documents on her laptop while Sarah rested on the couch. We've triggered margin calls on 3 of Marcus's major investment positions. What does that mean? Marcus borrowed money to invest in tech stocks, using his own company shares as collateral. When those stocks dropped below certain thresholds, his lenders demanded immediate payment. He's been forced to liquidate assets at unfavorable prices. Sarah's phone displayed financial news notifications showing Sterling Tech Acquisition stock down 12% in 3 days. Is this because of us? Partially. We've been placing strategic short positions and coordinating with other institutional investors who were already concerned about Marcus's debt ratios. Sometimes you don't need to push someone off a cliff. You just need to remove the handholds they're using to stay balanced. Elena showed Sarah a series of investment reports. Your husband's business model requires constant refinancing. Every 6 months, he needs to secure new loans or investor commitments to fund his next acquisition. We've been systematically convincing his usual sources of capital to pursue other opportunities. How? By offering them better deals elsewhere. Mitchell Capital Partners has relationships with pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and private investors across 3 continents. When we suggest they might find more attractive returns in other ventures, they listen. Sarah watched her mother work with growing amazement. This was not revenge in any traditional sense. This was the methodical application of financial leverage by someone who understood the system better than Marcus ever had. "What about Jade?" Sarah asked. "She posted photos yesterday from a 5-star hotel in Monaco, wearing jewelry that must have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars." Elena laughed coldly. "Jade Cooper is about to learn an expensive lesson about sustainable luxury. The jewelry is rented. The hotel suite is being paid for with cash advances on credit cards, and Marcus's attempts to secure European investors are failing spectacularly. Because you control his potential investors. Because we've provided those investors with detailed financial analysis showing that Sterling Tech Acquisitions is over-leveraged and headed for insolvency. When European billionaires want to know whether someone is worth doing business with, they call firms like ours for due diligence." Elena pulled up another document showing Marcus's company stock price continuing its decline. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow. We're going to call in the loans." "What loans?" "Remember that $18 million Marcus stole from your portfolio. He used it as seed money for a major acquisition, borrowing an additional $50 million against future earnings. Mitchell Capital Partners has quietly purchased those loan agreements from the original lenders." Sarah felt a chill of understanding. "You own his debt now. We own $68 million of Marcus Sterling's debt, secured by his company assets and personal guarantees. And as of tomorrow morning, those loans will be in technical default due to his failure to maintain required asset ratios." "You're going to bankrupt him." "I'm going to give him a choice," Elena corrected. "He can negotiate a restructuring that involves full repayment of stolen funds plus penalties, or he can face immediate foreclosure on his business and personal assets." Sarah's phone buzzed with a social media update from Jade, but this time the tone had changed dramatically. Instead of luxury lifestyle posts, Jade had shared a cryptic message: "Sometimes the universe tests your faith in people you trust, staying positive through challenging times." "They're fighting," Sarah observed. Elena smiled with satisfaction. Jade Cooper discovered that the jewelry she thought was purchased for her was actually rented for social media photography. The Monaco trip was funded with borrowed money that Marcus doesn't have, and the private jet belongs to investors who are now asking uncomfortable questions about their money. She's realizing he's not as wealthy as she thought. She's realizing that lifestyle inflation and actual wealth are 2 very different things. Marcus has been spending like a billionaire while operating like someone living paycheck to paycheck on a very large scale. Elena closed her laptop and turned to face Sarah directly. "But this isn't just about punishing Marcus or his girlfriend. This is about securing your daughter's future and teaching both of them that actions have consequences." What happens when the loans are called in? Marcus will have 72 hours to repay $68 million or face immediate asset seizure. He'll be forced to choose between personal bankruptcy and negotiating with us directly. Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. And if he chooses to negotiate, then he'll discover that the woman he dismissed as a dependent housewife is actually the daughter of one of the most powerful private equity executives in America. And that his attempt to steal from our family was the single most expensive mistake of his career. As if summoned by their conversation, Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus's number. Elena gestured for Sarah to answer while activating a recording app on her own phone. Hello, Marcus. Sarah, we need to talk. Something very strange is happening with my business finances, and I need to understand what's going on. Sarah met her mother's eyes and smiled for the first time in weeks. I'd be happy to discuss that with you, Marcus, but I think you should know that I won't be negotiating alone. Marcus arrived at Elena's temporary apartment looking nothing like the confident billionaire who had dismissed Sarah 6 weeks earlier. His usually perfect appearance showed signs of strain-wrinkled shirt, stubble, and the kind of desperate energy that comes from sleepless nights and financial panic. Sarah, you look better, he said, eyeing Elena warily. And you must be her mother. Elena Mitchell, she replied without offering her hand. I understand you've been having some business difficulties. Marcus settled uncomfortably on the edge of a chair, clearly recognizing that he was no longer controlling the conversation. I've been informed that Mitchell Capital Partners has acquired several of my loan agreements and is threatening to call them in simultaneously. Not threatening, Elena corrected calmly. Implementing. As of this morning, you're in technical default on $68 million in secured debt. Technical default based on asset valuation calculations that don't reflect the true value of my company. Elena pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the coffee table between them. Marcus, your company is worth exactly what investors are willing to pay for it. And currently, investors are unwilling to pay anything close to your claimed valuations. Sarah watched her ex-husband's confident facade crumble as Elena methodically explained the financial realities of his situation. His stock price had fallen 30% in 2 weeks. His European investors had withdrawn their commitments. His credit lines were being frozen by nervous lenders who suddenly viewed him as a high-risk borrower. This is financial manipulation, Marcus said desperately. You're artificially depressing my company's value to force me into bankruptcy. I'm applying standard business pressure to collect legally owed debts, Elena replied. The same tactics you used when you systematically isolated Sarah's investments and stole her funds for your personal use. I didn't steal anything. Those were joint assets managed through my investment firm. Elena opened the folder and pulled out a series of documents. These are forensic accounting reports showing exactly how you diverted $18 million from Sarah's portfolio into high-risk ventures without her knowledge or consent. That constitutes investment fraud under federal securities law. The color drained from Marcus's face as he reviewed the evidence. Sarah knew I was managing her investments. She signed authorization documents. She signed documents authorizing conservative portfolio management, Sarah said, finding her voice. Not speculation on cryptocurrency ventures and leveraged buyouts that could lose everything. Elena pulled out another set of papers. She also didn't authorize you to use her funds as collateral for your personal business loans or to guarantee debts associated with your affair. What do you mean? The Tiffany jewelry, the Monaco trip, the hotel suites and private jets you've been using to impress your girlfriend, all paid for with money stolen from my daughter's investment account. Marcus slumped in his chair, the weight of his situation finally becoming clear. What do you want? Full repayment of Sarah's $18 million, plus interest and penalties. Elena said, immediate liquidation of assets purchased with stolen funds, and a divorce settlement that reflects the actual financial harm you've caused. I don't have $18 million in liquid assets. Everything is tied up in business investments. Then you'll need to sell those investments or find alternative sources of capital. At current market prices, selling now would wipe out most of my net worth. Elena smiled coldly. Perhaps you should have considered that before stealing from my daughter. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt a mixture of vindication and pity. Jade wants to talk, she announced. She says she has information about Marcus that I need to know. Marcus's expression shifted to panic. Sarah, whatever she tells you, you have to understand that she's angry right now. Our relationship has been under stress because of these financial problems. Your relationship is under stress because she discovered you're not actually wealthy, Elena observed. And because she's learned that the lifestyle you promised her was funded with stolen money. How could you possibly know that? Elena smiled with predatory satisfaction. Because Jade Cooper contacted us yesterday. Apparently, she's quite concerned about potential legal liability for receiving stolen property. She's been very cooperative in documenting exactly how you funded your relationship with her. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His girlfriend had not only abandoned him, but had actively cooperated with his enemies. The billionaire divorces he had read about never mentioned this particular humiliation having your mistress testify against you. She's lying, Marcus said weakly. She's trying to protect herself by blaming me. Elena pulled out a final document from her folder. This is a sworn affidavit from Jade Cooper detailing every gift, every trip, every expense you paid for using funds diverted from Sarah's investment account. She's also provided copies of text messages where you explicitly told her the money came from liquidating some of Sarah's boring investments. Sarah read over the affidavit, seeing her marriage's destruction documented in excruciating detail. Every romantic gesture Marcus had made to his mistress had been funded by stealing from his pregnant wife. So what happens now? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. Now you learn what consequences look like when you attack the wrong family. 3 months after Sarah gave birth to her daughter Emma, she stood in the boardroom of Mitchell Capital Partners, watching her mother conduct the final phase of Marcus's financial destruction. The baby slept peacefully in her carrier while Elena presented a complete acquisition proposal to what remained of Marcus's board of directors. Sterling Tech Acquisitions has defaulted on $68 million in secured debt, Elena announced to the assembled executives, lawyers, and investors. Mitchell Capital Partners is prepared to restructure this debt in exchange for a controlling interest in the all-company assets. Sarah watched Marcus sitting at the far end of the conference table, looking like a defeated man wearing an expensive suit that no longer fit his circumstances. In 3 months, he had lost his company, his penthouse, his investment portfolio, and his girlfriend. Jade Cooper had fled to Los Angeles, posting social media updates about new beginnings and learning from toxic relationships. The terms are straightforward, Elena continued, distributing documents to each board member. Full debt forgiveness in exchange for company ownership, with Mr. Sterling retained as a paid consultant on existing client relationships. A consultant? Marcus said bitterly. You're turning me into an employee of my own company. Former company, Elena corrected. And you're fortunate to be offered any role at all, considering the federal fraud investigation that could still be pursued. Sarah stood and walked to the window overlooking downtown San Francisco, where Mitchell Capital Partners had relocated its headquarters after acquiring Sterling Tech. Her daughter would grow up in California, far from the Manhattan social scene that had valued appearance over substance. "I have one additional condition," Sarah said, turning back to face the room. "Marcus will establish a trust fund for Emma's education and future needs, funded by his remaining personal assets." "I barely have any personal assets left," Marcus protested. Elena smiled coldly. "You have the Hamptons house, the art collection, and your vintage car collection. Liquidating those assets should generate approximately $3 million for Emma's trust fund. Those are the only things I have left, which is still more than most fathers provide for their children's future," Sarah replied, "and significantly more than you left me when you walked out during my pregnancy." The board voted unanimously to accept Mitchell Capital Partners' acquisition offer. Marcus Sterling's business empire, built on leveraged debt and other people's money, had been systematically dismantled and absorbed by a more sophisticated operation. After the legal formalities were completed and the other participants had left, Marcus approached Sarah with the kind of humility she had never seen from him during their marriage. "Sarah, I want you to know that I understand what I lost. Not just the business or the money, but you and Emma. I threw away the best thing in my life for something shallow and temporary." "Yes, you did," Sarah agreed without sympathy. "The question is whether you've learned anything from the experience. I've learned that real wealth isn't about appearances or lifestyle inflation. It's about building something sustainable with people who matter." Elena joined them, carrying baby Emma with the natural ease of an experienced grandmother. "Words are easy, Marcus. What matters is what you do with the rest of your life. I want to be a good father to Emma, even if I can't be her provider anymore." Sarah studied her ex-husband's face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, she saw something she had rarely witnessed during their marriage: genuine humility and what might be the beginning of real character development. "You can see Emma on weekends, supervised visits until she's older and can make her own choices about spending time with you." "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "I know I don't deserve even that much." "No, you don't. But Emma deserves the chance to know her father, assuming you can become the kind of man worthy of knowing." Elena handed Emma back to Sarah and addressed Marcus directly. "There's one more thing you should understand. This wasn't revenge, Marcus. This was education. You needed to learn the difference between controlling wealth and actually possessing it. And have I learned? We'll see. Real change takes years to prove, not months." As Marcus left the building, Sarah felt a sense of completion rather than victory. Her ex-husband had faced consequences for his actions. Her daughter's future was secure, and she had discovered her own strength and worth independent of any relationship. "How do you feel?" Elena asked as they prepared to return to their new home in Marin County. "Like Emma and I are going to be just fine," Sarah replied, looking down at her sleeping daughter. "And like I finally understand what real power looks like." Elena smiled with genuine warmth. "Real power is knowing your own worth and refusing to accept anything less. That's a lesson I should have taught you years ago." "Better late than never," Sarah said, watching the San Francisco skyline through the window of their chauffeured car. "And much better than some people ever learn at all." 1 year later, Sarah stood in the executive conference room of Mitchell Capital Partners, leading her first major acquisition presentation to the board of directors. Baby Emma played quietly in her portable playpen, surrounded by toys and occasionally gurgling commentary on her mother's business strategy. "The target company represents exactly the kind of opportunity we specialize in," Sarah explained, clicking through financial projections and market analysis. "Undervalued tech assets, mismanaged by founders who prioritize growth over profitability." Elena watched from her position as board chair, her expression showing pride mixed with professional evaluation. Over the past year, Sarah had thrown herself into learning the family business with the same intensity she had once brought to her own startup. The transformation from abandoned wife to sophisticated investor had been remarkable to witness. The acquisition cost is $47 million, Sarah continued, but our analysis suggests the company's intellectual property portfolio alone is worth over $100 million in the right hands. Board member James Morrison raised his hand. What makes you confident that restructuring will succeed where the original management failed? Because the original management was focused on impressing venture capitalists instead of building sustainable business operations, Sarah replied. They prioritized flashy product launches over fundamental profitability metrics. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. Sarah was describing exactly the kind of mistakes Marcus had made with his own company, the patterns of behavior that had made him vulnerable to Mitchell Capital Partners' acquisition. After the board approved the acquisition unanimously, Sarah gathered her materials while Emma babbled happily from her playpen. The past year had been transformative in ways Sarah could never have imagined when Marcus first announced his intention to divorce her. Excellent presentation, Elena said as the other board members filed out. Your father would have been proud. I think he would have been surprised, Sarah replied, lifting Emma and settling her into her carrier. I certainly never expected to be running leveraged buyouts while changing diapers. The best executives are often those who've learned to handle multiple priorities simultaneously, Elena observed. Single-focused individuals rarely develop the strategic thinking required for complex operations. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus, who had been attempting to rebuild his life as a mid-level consultant in the tech industry. His messages had evolved from desperate pleas for reconsideration to respectful updates about his attempts at self-improvement. Dad visited Emma yesterday. The message read, took her to the playground and read her 3 books. She's getting so big and smart. Thank you for giving me the chance to know her. How is he doing? Elena asked, reading over Sarah's shoulder. Better than expected. He's working for a small firm in Austin, living modestly, going to therapy. The supervised visits have been going well. Do you think he's genuinely changed? Sarah considered the question while adjusting Emma's carrier. I think losing everything forced him to confront who he actually was versus who he pretended to be. Whether that change is permanent remains to be seen. They walked together toward the elevator, past conference rooms where other Mitchell Capital Partners executives were conducting their own business strategies and acquisition meetings. The firm's success had grown exponentially under Elena's leadership, but Sarah was beginning to understand her own potential role in its future. There's something I want to discuss with you, Elena said as they reached her corner office. I've been thinking about succession planning. Mom, you're only 59. It's too early to think about retirement. Not retirement, evolution. I want to establish a co-leadership structure that allows you to gradually take on more strategic responsibilities while I focus on the areas where I'm most effective. Sarah felt a thrill of excitement mixed with intimidation. Are you offering to make me a co-managing partner? I'm offering to make you my successor with a transition period that allows you to develop your own management style while learning from my experience. The proposal was everything Sarah had ever dreamed of professionally, but had never dared to imagine in the context of family wealth and legacy business operations. What about Emma? I want to be present for her childhood, not just successful in business. Elena smiled and walked to her desk, pulling out a framed photo of Sarah as a toddler, sitting in what appeared to be a similar office environment. Your father and I managed to balance business leadership with parenting. It's challenging, but not impossible with the right support systems. Sarah studied the photo, seeing herself as a happy child in what she now recognized as Mitchell Capital Partners' original offices, Her parents had been building their empire while raising their daughter, creating the foundation for the security and opportunity she now enjoyed. "I have one condition," Sarah said finally. "What's that?" "We establish a charitable foundation focused on supporting women who are rebuilding their lives after divorce or domestic financial abuse. I want Emma to grow up understanding that wealth comes with the responsibility to help others." Elena's smile broadened with genuine pride. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that will make you an exceptional leader. Consider it our first major initiative under the new partnership structure." As they left the office together, Emma gurgling contentedly in her carrier, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 18 months ago, she had been a discarded wife with no clear sense of her own worth. Now she was a mother, an executive, and an heiress to a business empire built on strategic thinking and financial expertise. Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from Jade Cooper, who had recently launched a lifestyle podcast about learning from past relationships and building authentic success. "Hi, Sarah," the message read. "I know this might seem strange, but I wanted you to know that I've been following your business success, and I'm genuinely impressed. I also wanted to apologize for my behavior during your divorce. I was young and stupid and caused you unnecessary pain. I hope you and your daughter are thriving." Sarah showed the message to Elena, who raised an eyebrow. Jade Cooper apologizing, "I never thought I'd see that." "People can change when they face real consequences for their actions," Sarah replied. "Even people we write off as irredeemable sometimes surprise us." "Are you going to respond?" Sarah considered for a moment, then typed a brief reply, "Thank you for reaching out. I wish you well in your future endeavors." As their car pulled away from the Mitchell Capital Partners building, Sarah looked out at the San Francisco skyline and felt a deep sense of contentment. Her story had begun as another cautionary tale about billionaire divorces and predatory relationships, but it had evolved into something much more meaningful, a story about discovering your own power and using it responsibly. Emma fell asleep in her car seat, peaceful and secure in the knowledge that she was loved and protected by women who understood the difference between appearing successful and actually building something lasting. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities that Sarah was only beginning to understand. She had learned the most valuable lesson of all true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or status symbols, but in the knowledge of your own worth and the strength to build a life that reflected your deepest values. And that was an inheritance she could pass on to her daughter with complete confidence.